Begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life. I really like this quote by Seneca. There's something sacred about mornings. Not the kind of morning where you snooze 5 alarms and scroll through social media in bed, but the kind where the light slowly seeps through the curtains, and for a moment, the world feels unhurried. That's the kind of morning I chase today. Not because it's easy, but because I was tired of rushing through life, always trying to catch up to something I couldn't name. So I asked myself, what would a day look like if I lived it like Seneca? Not perfectly, not like a Roman philosopher with servants and scrolls, but like me in my small apartment with my messy desk, with bills, emails, laundry, and an overthinking mind. Could I still live with depth, slowness, and discipline? This was my attempt. My first practice of the day. Morning discipline, 5:30 a.m. wake up. Let me be honest, I'm not a morning person, never have been. I'm the kind of person who hits snooze 4 times, who tells himself 10 more minutes won't hurt, who rolls over and disappears back into dreams just to delay the day. So when I set that alarm for 5:30 a.m., I was already dreading it the night before. And when it rang, every cell in my body screamed no. But then I remembered what Epictetus once said, "No great thing is created suddenly." And another quote echoed behind it, this time from Seneca. "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." That hit me, because that's exactly what I have been doing. Wasting my mornings, wasting my days, waiting for life to feel easier before I started living it. So I pulled the blanket off, swung my legs onto the cold floor, and got up. Not because I felt ready, but because I wanted to be someone who does hard things, even when they're small, even when no one's watching. I didn't reach for my phone, didn't check the news, didn't scroll, just silence, and me. I made my bed, not out of habit, but as a quiet declaration. I'm showing up today. Then I sat down to write, with eyes still half closed, but a heart a little more awake. And for the first time in a long time, the morning didn't feel like punishment. It felt like a beginning. And then, in the quiet that followed, Stoic journaling, practicing inner clarity. I didn't grow up reading philosophy. For most of my life, letters were just things you left unread in your inbox. But then I found him, Seneca, not in a classroom, not in a library. I found him one night when I couldn't sleep, scrolling through the noise, looking for something, anything, to quiet the restlessness inside me. And I stumbled on a line. "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." It hit too close, because at the time, I was alive, but barely living. Later, I learned that in the final years of his life, Seneca wrote letters to a man named Lucilius. They weren't about politics or war. They were about how to live, how to deal with time, anger, death, and fear, how to stay calm when the world pulls you in every direction. Those letters felt less like ancient philosophy and more like someone whispering across the centuries. "I've been where you are." So this morning, I followed his lead. Seneca wrote letters to Lucilius. I write letters to myself. No one else will ever read it, but I wrote, not to sound wise, not to fix anything, but to pause long enough to ask, what kind of life am I living? Just to be honest with myself, because maybe we all need to be reminded that life isn't something we master in one go. It's something we return to, every single day. As is a tale, so is life not how long it is, but how good it is what matters. Seneca once said, "So I wrote, I feel scattered. I'm worried I'm falling behind. I'm afraid I'll never feel whole. And instead of judging that voice, I gave it space." That's how Stoicism feels sometimes. Not strength like a statue, but strength like honesty. My thoughts settled, and then I made something warm. Mindful breakfast, practicing gratitude. Seneca often reminded us how little we truly need to live well. In one of his most well-known lines, he wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more. That is poor." At first glance, it sounds simple, almost too simple. But the more you sit with it, the more it reveals something uncomfortable and deeply human. Because the truth is, poverty isn't always about money. Sometimes it's about the feeling of never having enough. You could have a house, a car, a career, even a partner who loves you, and still feel empty, still scroll through social media and ache for someone else's life, still chase the next big thing, hoping it'll finally make you feel complete. Seneca isn't judging us here. He's inviting us to look inward. What if our suffering isn't because we lack things, but because we're convinced we're supposed to have more? What if the real freedom comes, not from getting more, but from needing less? When I first read that quote, I realized it wasn't my bank account that was making me anxious. It was the voice in my head that kept saying, "Not enough, not yet, keep going." That voice is what makes us poor. And learning to silence it, even just a little, is the beginning of a much richer life. So I made a simple breakfast. Just 2 slices of sourdough from the corner bakery on 5th Avenue, and a small cup of black coffee. My apartment in Brooklyn was still half asleep. The radiator hissed quietly in the background, and soft light spilled through the cracked blinds, painting golden lines on the tiny kitchen table I'd found on Craigslist last year. I didn't scroll my phone, didn't open my laptop, just sat there, on that creaky old chair, in a space barely big enough for 2, but it was mine. I ate slowly, felt the warmth of the mug against my palms, watched steam rise into the morning light like it had nowhere else to be. Usually, I treat breakfast like a formality, something to get through before the real part of the day begins. But this morning was different. I tasted the bread, really tasted it, felt the slight crunch as I bit into the crust. Let the bitterness of the coffee settle in, sharp but honest. And for once, I wasn't planning anything, wasn't fixing anything, wasn't chasing anything. I was just there, in my little Brooklyn apartment, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, and that small moment felt whole. And then, once everything was in its place, I knew what was waiting for me next: deep work. Learning to focus, like Seneca. Seneca once said, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." When I first read that, it didn't just sound wise. It felt painfully familiar, because that was my life. I thought being busy meant I was making progress. My calendar was always packed. My phone never stopped buzzing. Half of my attention was in a meeting, while the other half was replying to messages I wouldn't remember later. Even my weekends weren't safe. During brunch, I was already planning Monday. During a walk, I was replying to emails. At home, my mind was anywhere but present. I was living in fragments, scattered across apps, tabs, and to-do lists. Everywhere, yet nowhere. But that quiet morning, in my small Brooklyn apartment, with a cup of hot coffee and the sound of the city still asleep. Seneca's words finally landed. I didn't need to do more. I needed to be here, fully, deliberately, without distraction. That's when I decided to reclaim my focus, to practice what many call deep work, but what the Stoics would simply call attention. So I cleared my desk, closed every browser tab except one, turned off notifications, left my phone in the bedroom, and I did one thing, just one thing, deeply, intentionally. At first, it was hard. My mind fought back, grabbing for dopamine, craving noise. But slowly, my breath settled, my thoughts cleared, and I felt something rare presence. This wasn't about being productive. It wasn't about ticking boxes. It was about showing up to my own life. Because Seneca didn't just warn us about distraction. He challenged us to live with intention. He once wrote, "Nothing, to my way of thinking, is better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company." And that's what deep work really is. Not just focus, but a kind of stillness, a kind of discipline. The choice to give your full attention to the moment in front of you. In a world addicted to multitasking and endless scrolling, to focus is a revolutionary act. What surprised me next was, where time hurts the most, a Stoic moment in line. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." I've read that quote dozens of times. It's framed on my wall. I've underlined it in 2 separate copies of Letters to Lucilius. But the strange thing about wisdom is, you can read it 100 times and still not feel it until a very ordinary moment makes it real. For me, it was a Tuesday morning, standing in line at a small coffee shop 2 blocks from my apartment in Brooklyn. It wasn't dramatic. I wasn't in a crisis. I just had 7 minutes to kill before a meeting. So, like always, I reached for my phone, email, notifications, something about a sale ending soon. I didn't even want anything specific. I just didn't want to be still. Then something caught my eye. A little girl in front of me, maybe 6 or 7 years old, was talking to her dad about the pastries in the glass case. She wasn't in a rush. She wasn't trying to multitask. She was just there, pointing at croissants like they were treasure. And her dad, he was looking down at his phone. I wish I could say that surprised me, but in that moment, I realized I do the same thing. Every day, in elevators, on park benches, even during conversations. I fill time like it's empty space. I treat the small, quiet moments like they don't matter, like they're just in between the real stuff. But this was the real stuff. And Seneca's words finally landed. You are living as if destined to live forever. Your own frailty never occurs to you. That line hurt a little, because I saw how often I act like time is endless. Scrolling while the coffee brews, half listening when a friend is talking, checking notifications between thoughts like, I'm afraid of silence. I didn't need a tragedy to teach me about time, just one tiny moment of presence that I almost missed. So for the rest of the day, I chose to live differently. Even if just a little, I don't always succeed, but when I catch myself, I put the phone away, I look up, I take a breath and be where I am. Because these in-between moments, they are life. And Seneca was right. We don't suffer because life is too short. We suffer because we keep waiting for it to start. Then came another moment. Interruptions, practicing grace in the chaos. I wish I could say the whole day unfolded like a perfectly curated morning routine, but it didn't. By noon, the peace I had carefully built started to crack. A coworker sent a passive-aggressive message that made my chest tighten. A neighbor started drilling into the wall. Right as I was deep in writing, the city buzzed louder. My plans useless. Real life showed up, and so did my old reflexes. I felt the irritation rising, that quick flash of judgment, the urge to snap back, to fix it, control it, blame someone. My stoic calm, shaky at best. But here's where the practice actually begins. Because Stoicism isn't about floating through life untouched. It's about how you respond when life pokes you, prods you, tests you. So I took a breath, and another. Then I remembered what Marcus Aurelius once wrote: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And I thought of Seneca's words too. "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." It helped, not because the noise stopped, but because I stopped trying to fight it. I couldn't control the drilling. I couldn't rewrite that message. But I could control what I did next. I returned to my breath, to my journal, to the part of me that still belonged to me, no matter what. And that was enough for now. Because the goal isn't to have perfect days. The goal is to meet imperfect moments with steadiness, with grace, with awareness. That's how you live a stoic life. Not in theory, but in practice. And honestly, in a world of noise, that's its own quiet victory. As the afternoon unfolded, I found myself hesitating because what came next wasn't easy. A conversation with fear. There was a conversation I kept pushing off with my brother. We hadn't talked properly since I bailed on helping him move last month. It wasn't a big blowout fight, but the kind that lingers quietly. Disappointment that simmers just beneath the surface. I took a walk to a small cafe on the corner of 4th and Union. The kind of place with creaky floors, handwritten chalkboard menus, and jazz humming low through the speakers. I sat by the window with a black coffee, watching raindrops chase each other down the glass. The city moved around me, people rushing past with umbrellas, yellow cabs splashing through puddles. But inside, everything felt still, and I sat there with my phone in my hand, his name on the screen, my thumb hovering. It's strange how calling someone you love can feel harder than any stranger's judgment. Because with family, you already know the weight of letting them down. Fear told me to wait, to send a quick text, to hope time would make it disappear. But I remembered what Seneca once wrote: "He who is brave is free." So I tapped call. He answered after 2 rings. "Hey," he said. Short, a little hesitant. I took a breath. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I should have shown up. I didn't, and that's on me." There was a pause. Then he said, "Yeah, it sucked. But I appreciate you saying that. We didn't solve everything, but we started something again. A thread of trust, fragile but real." That call didn't make me feel heroic. It made me feel human, and in a strange way, stronger, because bravery isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just honesty, said quietly, over coffee on a rainy afternoon in Brooklyn. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." So I did what a good man would do. I showed up, late, but present. Later in the day, evening reflection, letting go. Evening came quietly. No big accomplishment, no grand finale, just the soft sound of the city winding down and a gentle ache in my shoulders. The kind that comes not from stress, but from showing up. I stood at the small window in my Brooklyn apartment, the air warm and still. The light outside was changing. That golden hour where the buildings glow just a little softer, and everything feels like it's holding its breath. I slid the glass door open and stepped onto the balcony. It's tiny, barely enough room for a chair and a small potted plant, but it's my little sanctuary. I sat down, wrapped my hands around a warm mug of chamomile tea, and watched the sky shift from amber to lavender. The hum of distant traffic, a siren a few blocks away, a dog barking below, all of it reminding me this is life. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. And as I sat there, surrounded by nothing extraordinary, I asked myself a question I've been returning to every night. Did I live today well? Not did I do everything right? Not was I productive enough? But did I show up with intention? Did I try to stay present when it was easier to zone out? Did I treat people with patience, including myself? Seneca once said, "As is a tale, so is life not how long it is, but how good it is what matters." Because living like Seneca isn't about chasing achievement, it's about learning to be at peace with the ordinary, to let the quiet moments count, to let the day close gently, with reflection instead of regret. Seneca advised each day acquire some item that will make it better than the day before. So I didn't chase perfection. I collected one small truth, today's truth. That stillness is a choice, that I can meet the day on my terms, that I don't need more time, just more intention. I closed the day with gratitude, not because everything went right, but because I showed up for myself fully. Then came another moment. Late night doubt and resilience. It was almost midnight when the old voices crept in. Are you really changing? What's the point? You'll just fall back into your old ways tomorrow. I stared at the ceiling, not sleeping, not thinking clearly, just doubting. But instead of reaching for my phone, I reached for my journal, and I wrote not to solve anything, but to stay with the feeling without letting it drown me. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And he was right. The things that kept me up at night, they weren't always real. They were thoughts, stories, what-ifs and worst-case scenarios that played like looping background noise. Like the fear of not being good enough. The idea that if I slowed down, I'd fall behind. That if I made a mistake, people would walk away. That one text, one failure, one moment of weakness could somehow define me. And here's the thing. The pain wasn't coming from the actual events. It came from what I told myself about them. The monster wasn't the doubt itself. It was the story I wrapped around it. I saw this clearly one evening, alone in my apartment. I had been overthinking a conversation from earlier that day, replaying every word, imagining what they really meant, building this whole internal narrative about how I must have messed things up. But when I paused, really paused, and sat down with my journal, something shifted. I asked myself what actually happened. And then, what am I making it mean? That simple space between reality and imagination. That's where the power was. That's where the suffering started, or stopped. Seneca's words echoed in my mind. We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. It wasn't about denying emotions. It was about not feeding the fire unnecessarily. Because when I stopped fueling the story, the fear faded. Not instantly, not perfectly, but enough to breathe again, enough to see clearly. And that's something Stoicism has taught me. Day after day, most of our suffering doesn't come from life. It comes from the way we think about life. And the good news, that's something we can change. So I sat there breathing slowly and told myself gently, this too is part of the work, not a failure, not a setback, just another place to practice. And finally, a quiet ending. I didn't live like a Stoic emperor today. I didn't glide through the hours in perfect self-command. I got distracted. I got irritated. I felt a little lost between emails and subway rides and silence. But I also tried. I paused when it was hard. I paid attention when I remembered. I kept showing up, flawed, but honest. And maybe that's enough. The apartment was quiet now. The city had settled into its softer sounds. The hum of distant traffic, the low murmur of someone laughing 2 floors down. I turned off the lamp beside my bed, left my phone on the kitchen counter, and laid down without reaching for anything to distract me. No podcast, no playlist, no scrolling, just me, tired but present. I pulled the blanket over my shoulders and whispered to myself, you did what you could. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. I used to think obstacles were the problem. Now I see them as the practice. The irritations, the temptations, the tired mornings, and the restless nights. They're not interruptions. They are the path. Seneca reminded us, begin at once to live, and count each separate day as a separate life. So I did. I lived this day, not perfectly, but fully. And I'll try again tomorrow. Not to master everything, just to be here, more than I was yesterday. Because in the end, a Stoic life isn't built in grand declarations. It's built in mornings when you get up anyway, in moments when you choose to breathe instead of react, in quiet nights when you're gentle with yourself, even when the day wasn't easy. And that is how the way begins. A day worth remembering. I didn't do anything extraordinary today. I didn't change the world. I didn't fix all my flaws. I just tried to live like Seneca might. Slowly, deeply, with presence and purpose. And honestly, that was enough. Seneca once said, as long as you live, keep learning how to live. And today, in my little apartment, through small choices, quiet moments, and honest effort, I felt like I did, not perfectly, but sincerely, and maybe that's what matters most. So if something in this video made you pause, made you breathe a little slower, or helped you see your day a bit differently, try it for yourself. Live one day like a Stoic, just one, and then tell me what it taught you. I read every comment, and your reflections matter more than you think. If you want more videos like this, slow, deep, real, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. It's free, but it helps this kind of content reach others who might need it. And if this video spoke to you, share it. Send it to someone who's been rushing through life and might need a reminder to pause. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And as Seneca wrote, begin at once to live and count each day as a separate life. Maybe today was one worth counting.